So it's good to be back on YouTube. My apologies for the delay I took. I've been busy setting up shop in a new place, and it just has taken longer than expected. So I hope to get these videos back on track soon. And what better way to start than with this article someone sent me a few days ago, which is called Liquid Attitudes, Actor Training, and the Contradictions of Capitalism. And it's on this website called HowlRound. And HowlRound is sort of a good database of new up-and-coming and established critics in theater, in actor training, in lots of different areas and disciplines talking about current productions, ethics in the theater, lots of interesting, unique stuff. So someone sent me this article, and I thought it was really worth taking a look at. The reason is a reason that I really wish actors would think about a little bit more. And it's that this article is perfectly, in my opinion, indicative of the type of mentality that a lot of actor trainers today in the theater have, as well as critics and directors. There's a kind of collective push in this mentality. And that collective attitude can best be summed up in drawing comparisons and seeing things that aren't really there. Making decisions about how to work with actors based on these concepts and ideas. So when actors look at this and they go, okay, why would I want to read an article called Liquid Attitudes about capitalism and actor training? I completely agree with you. It sounds like, watching paint dry would be more exciting. But these are the people who are making the decisions that directly impact your career. And they're doing it in this way. And it's a very unique phenomenon. It's a very unique place the theater is in today. It's no longer directors these days who are really making up the new training methods for actors. It used to be actors and directors, the 30s, 40s, 50s. You had people like, all the way down up from Stanislavski even before that, but you had people like Strasberg and Meisner and Harold Klerman and Uta Hagen and Stella Adler, and they've all developed their own training approaches from a place of practice. But what you see today is you see a lot of people, in effect, leaving their posts as actors, as directors, as writers, and going straight into academia.
Run away! Run away! Run away!
And exploring theories and ideas that then impact what you learn and what is supposed to help you with your job. So it's a new wave in the theater happening because the academics are defining what the next steps in the theater will be for training. And the reason it's relevant for us as actors is if we have an audition that's happening in a day or two, or we have to go on set with a very specific set of requirements, whether it's physical or an accent, we need practical tools to do this. Well, the place we're probably going to look towards, if we don't have a coach or a mentor, is taking some workshops or classes and learning some skills, because that's how they're billed as. Except all of the training that we will go and learn is based on ideology. And it's based on ideas about what acting should be in a larger context. And that's why I think it's worth taking a look at an article like this, because this shows exactly the kind of decision making that is going to change what you learn and impact your career. And I don't think it's particularly fair. So this is a lengthy article. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it will go on and on and on. I will have a link in the description to the article itself. But I'll read out a few choice paragraphs that kind of highlight what I'm talking about. The article begins with a single quote at the top that says in italics, "But the director will give us choices." And from there, the author, who is an acting teacher, gets into talking about how he was at a workshop in New York City. It was an Alexander workshop, and he heard a young actor say this. And then he goes to write about this actor. The young man in question was a freshly minted acting BFA from one of the New York University conservatoires, and he certainly fit the mold. Slight, dark hair, face artfully stubbled, he seemed to have been sent by central casting to fill the role of young aspiring actor in New York. No doubt he was superbly talented and very savvy. However, his comment, which is the one at the beginning of the article in italics about directors giving you choices, struck me like a clout on the ear. Here was a young man who had seemingly every advantage the American theater could give him. Right body type, right training, graduation from a prestigious program, but he balked at doing one of the most basic things an actor is called upon to do, and that is to make interesting choices. It seems that we've had an exquisitely engineered puppet, the uber marionette that Edward Gordon Craig always dreamed of. There is only one actor, nay, one man who has the soul of the dramatic poet, and who has ever served as the true and loyal interpreter of the poet, Craig wrote, and this is the marionette. Our young man seemed resigned, if not content, to cede a basic element of artistry to someone else. For a long time, I firmly believed, and have taught my students, that acting really only comprises three basic things. Those are: 1. Move so you can be seen. 2. Speak so you can be heard. 3. Make interesting choices. And the rest is details. Now, admittedly, each of those things can be unpacked and examined in depth for both meaning and technique. But at the end of the day, an actor must be capable of doing those things. And yet our man was going to cede a full third of his responsibility, as well as a third of his joy, to the director. Yet, try as I might, I have difficulty fathoming why. Well, isn't that special? That's just lovely. So already, there's a bit of an issue, and it's the game that a lot of acting teachers play, whether they're teaching something classical or something new. And the game is this. They tell you something that sounds really good to you. So, of course, as an actor, you want to make interesting choices. I highly doubt that the actor who had made that comment about the director giving him the right choices would have said to him if asked, no, I don't want to be an interesting actor. I don't want to do anything interesting. So they get you with something that you actively want to do. Make interesting choices in this case.
Because we're adding a little something to this month's sales contest. As you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. Anybody want to see second prize? Second prize, a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired. A, B, C. A, always, B, B, C, closing. Always be closing. Always be closing. AIDA, attention, interest, decision, action. Attention, do I have your attention? Interest, are you interested? I know you are, because it's fuck or walk. You close or you hit the bricks. Decision, have you made your decision for Christ? And action.
But if an acting teacher is telling you, listen, as an actor, one of the things you have to do is make interesting choices. Now, how much class time is going to be devoted to move so you can be seen? Probably not a lot. In fact, I think you figured that one out before you came into the class. How about speak so you can be heard? Well, maybe a little bit, but not too much. So the rest of the time, if these are the only three things he teaches, goes to make interesting choices. But here's the thing. Just because someone can identify a basic job requirement doesn't mean they actually know how to do that in any kind of a logical, coherent way. Make interesting choices. Well, interesting according to who? This is where the issue comes. In a classroom, the only person who gets to really determine whether you made an interesting choice or not is the person you paid money to tell you if you made an interesting choice or not, i.e. the teacher. But the implication then is, the more that they begin to attune you to what is interesting to them, the more likely you are to be interesting as an actor. But no matter how much expertise the teacher has, they only represent one opinion. Neither of you, chances are the right audience for the work you'll be doing. So an example of that is, if you get cast in a Disney on Ice show, lucky you, well, you might be one of the actors who would act in it, but you might not be one of the people who would actually pay money to see it if it was coming and if it was a different production. So you might not adequately reflect at all the basic interests of the audience you're trying to play to. And that's the real issue of the actor trying to be interesting. You get stuck in a kind of vague general puzzle box from hell, and there's no real clear answer to what you need to do. Because all you need is for someone to say, well, I'm unimpressed. That was boring. And the whole thing has fallen apart. So make interesting choices doesn't actually mean anything. Look, if something is profoundly boring, it's still interesting. You're still commenting on how boring it is. It has commanded your interest. So it's just a word game that ends up being played. For an actor then to say, you know what, I can't do anything interesting, but the director is the person who is the bridge between me and the audience. He or she is the one who is supposed to figure out how to translate this material to the interests of this audience. I'm going to let them make the interesting choices for me. That's a smart actor because they're doing the only thing they can. If you have a project you're working on, you can't be the sole determiner of what's interesting. You might not represent the audience. You can't see what you're doing. Even if you did the whole thing in front of a mirror, you can't see what you're doing on the outside the whole time. And furthermore, you might think it's interesting, but no one else might. So already, you cannot be the determiner of what is interesting. You will need an outside pair of eyes. Who that falls to is a tricky thing, because hopefully it's the director. But if you're like most people and you're working with a moron, you can't trust them to be the right eyes for you. So then maybe you bring in a friend, or you bring in a coach, or you bring in someone to help you. And so to say, I don't have any control over being interesting. Now, I can pretend I do. I can try and force being interesting. I can try and figure out the audience's responses and try and gauge if that's interesting or not. You can say all that, but at the end of the day, you have no idea what is interesting to another human being because you will not be in their head. You can take some guesses, but on stage, that is such a dangerous thing to do. If you get a response, it might not be because anything you did. It might be because something else was set up that got you that response. Maybe a lighting cue, maybe something went wrong in the previous scene, maybe another actor said a line a particular way. I mean, you don't know. So, yes, we all want to be interesting, but how do you do that? It's just not realistic. So for an actor to say, you know what, I'm going to leave it up to the smart choice, which is to not assume responsibility for something I don't have control over, and let someone else figure that out for me. Hey, maybe you should do it this way. It looks pretty good when you do that. Oh, great. I didn't think of that before. Here's the thing about this, and it's about any acting teacher who says something like this. Now, it goes back to the idea of classes. Move so you can be seen. How long does that take to teach? Not very long. Speak so you can be heard. Not very long. In fact, if you're working on set and on camera, you probably need to speak so you're heard a little less. But make interesting choices. Now, that will keep you a student forever. I don't believe it's some malicious intention on the part of this person. I think acting teachers who say things like this mean well, but it's an absolutely blind corridor. The more that you're told and fed things like, yeah, you have to make interesting choices, which sounds good, the more it leads you on a kind of blind chase of, yeah, but how do I get that? Well, it was never up to you in the first place. All you know is what is interesting to you, and you can make guesses about what is interesting to other people, but that's all they are, guesses. And when you're working, you can't be stopping to make guesses about, how's this having an effect? Of course you can feel it. You can feel things, you can intuit maybe how the audience is feeling, but you cannot be interesting to all people at all times, or even to a majority. But now back to the article. What happens after that is this teacher is horrified that, this actor has relinquished a third of his joy. And that to me is really funny, because I don't see how that kind of a situation to put yourself in could bring you any joy. So after he's put in the linchpin, after he's sold the reader on how important it is to make interesting choices, and how if you hand that over to someone else, you're giving up joy in the process, which is a gigantic leap in itself, and you have to make a lot of generalizations about actors to say that. Well, then he gets into the next step. And I'll just read this part out loud to you because it says so much more than I can even explain. So he's talking about them. In her book, And Then You Act, Anne Bogart encourages artists to have an attitude. Acting is the dynamic play of extending out and receiving back, will and grace. Striving to be without attitude, one is purely receptive, is not reaching out. So why banish a part of themselves? That answer is, quite simply, commodification. A commodity is a market item that is fungible or readily exchangeable for an identical item. A barrel of oil is essentially a barrel of oil. One is very much like the other, and they are literally interchangeable. In trying to render themselves marketable, actors today go through the commodification process. The ultimate commodity is, of course, money. A dollar can be turned into almost anything. A cup of coffee, a haircut, a calendar, or a few moments of attention from a stripper. The possibilities are limitless. Given enough liquidity, there are essentially no checks upon our desires. Given enough liquidity, you may even be able to buy an election. So here we come then to the inherent conflicts in American actor training. A conflict which causes our meticulously trained actors to withdraw from one of the basic elements of acting. It is also one of the perils of studying and teaching acting in a late capitalist system. Under our current system, we must accept that the market is oversaturated with actors, and so students are graduating into a professional pool that has no inherent interest in them joining and is already overcrowded as it is. This leads to all manner of abuses, from low, no-page work, paying in exposure, and other exploitative work practices. When supply massively outstrips demand, the value of the work provided is so low that it cannot in itself make any demands in terms of the conditions of employment. The cliche is, if you don't like it, there are a dozen more just like you. This is the reality of the market. We groan with a shrug. It is reality, and nobody has yet to come up with a better system. The acting teachers add a chorus of, well, what are we supposed to do, to the general lamentation? There just aren't enough jobs, and yet we keep moving young people through our conservatoires. There's more to it, but I'll stop there. What a bunch of bullshit. What a badly formed argument. To make this argument work, it has to be true that the actor who says, I'm going to let the director make those interesting choices for me, is giving up their joy, right? So that already has to be true, and that's just silly. But even if you say that is true, then it means that if you go that route and you say, well, I don't want to make any interesting choices, I don't want to do it, I just want to be moved around like some puppet. By the way, find me one actor who actually thinks that way. So say you are that actor, and then what happens is you become an object. You become commodity. You become like an item in a marketplace. You're no different, according to this article, than a barrel of oil. And that's why it seems there's so many actors in the industry who all look alike and behave alike. And it's all about money. It's money, money, money. That's the whole premise this is on. Well, okay, of course, in certain sects of the industry, like commercials, the happy father who is aging a little bit past his time, he's starting to lose his hair, falling out, but what do you know, he found some string cheese, and it reminds him of when he was 5 and was given some string cheese. I don't know, something like that. Okay. There's no acting required for that. There is no anything required for that, because that's coming out of writers, probably bored out of their minds, sitting in a room trying to figure out how to juice some interest in a piece of string cheese. And that's really where the commodification takes place, right? That in those cases, you absolutely are just a piece of decoration for the commercial. That's why commercials pay actors so well. But here's the thing. That has nothing to do with training actors. No actor I've ever met graduates Juilliard and says, God, I can't wait to be the king of string cheese. They recognize that as a necessary thing to keep themselves fresh, working on camera, going forward. That doesn't make them a commodity. No actor training trains someone for the string cheese commercial. It trains them for challenging roles in theater, challenging roles in film, challenging roles in television, challenging roles in other mediums, challenging roles in general. It is up to the actor whether or not they want to take the commercial that will help them make money to keep themselves going. They are not devaluing themselves by doing that. They're choosing a job that, yes, it's less ideal, but it keeps them going in the industry. So of course you can say it's about money. Well, duh. But to say an actor does something for money and somehow that makes them an object is really reductionist. And it's silly. We are in an industry where looks matter and voices, but those are all descriptions of the actors currently working. That's what the trend is. It's what seems to be in vogue. Well, 50 years ago, it was one look and now it's another. Okay, why? Because those are the actors who are currently working in big box office hits. That's the money part. There's no commodification of the actor in that case. Yes, the actor sells. So does the story. That's the whole point. Chris Hemsworth is a brilliant actor, but the thing is, unless he's in Thor's costume swinging a hammer at something, people are probably not going to shell out to pay for, say, the Chris Hemsworth biography. I don't know, maybe they will. Chris Hemsworth is not the commodity. He is simply a part of something that makes money. He's simply a part of a project. And it's absolutely silly to say that because actors, according to this person, release their identity and just want to be a blank slate, that suddenly they're turned into these thoughtless objects and moved around by greedy, hungry directors. What a stupid argument. Actors are immensely thought-driven. They think about things. No, they might not want to take the string cheese commercial, but it's their choice. At no point do they ever become some degraded dollar bill system. And almost no actor that I can think of who has survived in the industry is trying to be a blank slate. They all want to show their creative self, and they don't relinquish it by saying, this thing called the interesting choice, I can't make a decision over. Therefore, I'm going to let someone else take care of it. It's people like this who are going to make decisions about what training will be and will not. It's very possible that now training systems may be created to reject commodification, which isn't even happening in the first place. The film is the product, and the people are a part of that product, but they are not the product itself. So that's the thing that I wish actors would be more aware of. The people who are making these decisions are seeing patterns that, maybe it is there. Maybe that's true. There is some connection between actors and capitalism, aside from any industry in capitalism. But there's nothing practical that can be done with that. But the scary thing is, he's proposing something practical might be able to be done in the realm of teaching and working with actors. That's scary because that impacts you looking for something practical. You looking for something that's relevant to Tuesday's audition and not making statements about patterns that probably don't even exist. That's why I wish actors would look more closely at groups like this and think about, it is a great idea that we should make interesting choices. I'm all for that. But that you can learn how to do that? No, that's not a possibility. Greek philosopher Epictetus, 5 different people give me 5 pronunciations of his name. But a few thousand years ago, he said, you only have command over what is in your control. And the interests of other people is not in your control. You can influence it, but why make your work dependent on something you will never have control over? The smart actor, I think, relinquishes that and says, okay, director, you make the interesting choices. I'll go with it. I've got that open receptiveness. Or bringing in a friend to give you views on if it's not working or not. The smart actor doesn't chase an empty idea that will keep them forever blind, forever chasing something they can't have. And I hate to say, keep supporting the ideas of people who, in order to push their own agendas, have to commodify actors. An argument like this has to reduce actors to marionettes who have no interest in anything but being moved around. And that's just ridiculous. So I hope actors stay on top of these things, keep an eye on these people. And if you smell some of this agenda-pushing stuff in a workshop description, something like that, well, do what you want, but I would say stay the hell away from it.